Here's a little question. Why does everyone think that victims of rape are making it up? I literally do not get it. Well, maybe I do.
Let me preface this video by saying when I was younger, I was told a story. And that story was called The Boy Who Cried Wolf. Now, the moral of the story is going to become very important later in this video.
Hey everyone, Lacey Green here. There's kind of a huge awareness movement happening right now around sexual assault. If you haven't noticed, come join the living. One of the highest profile conversations has been about Bill Cosby. 35 different women have accused him of sexual violation.
Yeah, that might be true, but in all actuality, it really doesn't matter if these women don't have any evidence. For example, let's say I got 100 people to say that you raped me, Lacey, and a lot of people believe that. Would it be fair for you to go to jail just because 100 people said that you committed a crime that you didn't in fact commit? Of course not. That is the whole reason why we have due process. That is why you are supposed to be assumed innocent until proven guilty. That is why it requires evidence in order to convict someone of a crime, so innocent people don't have to suffer. It doesn't matter if a whole bunch of witnesses come if they have zero evidence to back up anything that happened. Also, there's a gigantic problem with the time that they announced that they had been raped, because there have been decades in between the events, and so many different things in terms of evidence has been lost between that gap of time.
Close to 90 universities are also under federal investigation for failing to address sexual assault on their campuses.
Probably because in the past, when they do, automatically drop the hammer on someone who claimed to have been raped, or when they drop the hammer on the person who's being accused of rape, sometimes they end up being wrong, and sometimes innocent people suffer because of it. And then more than that, sometimes universities get sued by the innocent people. So, the last thing universities want happening to them is to be sued when their entire business is trying to get money off of you. That's why. It's because they fell into the notion that there is a rape culture, and when they tried to prosecute so many different young men who didn't do anything wrong, they ended up getting bit in the ass. And rightly so, considering the fact that an innocent person had to suffer for something he didn't do. I'd also like to add that being under investigation does not mean that you've done something wrong. In fact, sometimes an investigation can prove that the story of the person being accused is actually false. So,
now there's a new documentary out, which I'm dying to see, called The Hunting Ground, which profiles several students who have been assaulted. By telling their stories, The Hunting Ground may be directly confronting one of the biggest barriers sexual assault survivors face. Nobody believes them and thinks that they're lying. 35 women have spoken out, and Cosby still has ardent defenders and gets standing ovations on his national tour.
Once again, Lacey, mob ruling does not mean anything unless these women actually bring Bill Cosby to court. The justice system can't do anything about that. And we don't know if these allegations are true or not. Just because a bunch of women say it's true doesn't mean that it actually is.
Think about that. If 35 women can come forward and still be doubted, what chance does one woman have? I think Jay Leno laid it out pretty nicely. Quote, "I don't know why it's so hard to believe women. Go to Saudi Arabia and you need 2 women to testify against a man. Here, you need 25.
First of all, we don't live in Saudi Arabia. Second of all, that's just not true. There have been lots of times where innocent men were accused of being raped, and there have been lots of times where rapists have been convicted for being rapists. Is it true that some rapists are able to rape women and never suffer consequences because they're never taken to court? Yeah, but remember, they were never taken to court. It's not that we live in a rape culture, it's that he was never taken to court and he was never arrested. But too many times in our society are men accused of doing something they didn't do and are put in jail for something they did not, for a crime they never committed. That is a gigantic problem that we're facing. It shouldn't happen to one person, let alone hundreds of innocent black men.
Quote, even more interesting is the fact that literally nobody paid attention to these women until a man, Hannibal Buress, spoke up about it. P.S. I do love Hannibal. Can I please have his babies? Thanks. Seriously though, y'all, why don't people trust rape survivors? I think there's a related trend here. People don't trust women.
Bullshit. Would you trust a man that claimed that he was raped by a woman and then throw that woman in jail? Question, would you trust a man that said he was beaten up by a woman and then put that woman in jail? With no evidence of any of that happening. Because if you answered no to both those questions, then I'm just going to assume that you are a misandrist and that you hate men and that you don't trust men. See how that doesn't make any logical sense?
It took a super viral video showing how a woman was treated walking down the street for society to acknowledge that, okay, maybe street harassment is a real thing.
Yes, because men saying hello to women is harassment. It's the most deepest and most terrible and most horrible form of harassment. On a serious note, I have to wonder, how in the world do these women make friends if saying hello and hi to them is now considered harassment?
Studies have demonstrated that even in the face of hard evidence, men still don't believe that female scientists face sexism in the workplace. They think that women are making it all up. The society-wide belief that women are liars stems in part from the belief that women are overly emotional, irrational, crazy, or hysterical.
Stereotypes are stereotypes because there's some truth in it. Of course, this isn't saying that all women are like that, obviously, and it's unfortunate that that statement must even be said. However, there's a gigantic problem with your video, Lacey. You changed from rape survivor to women. Not all women are survivors of rape, and not everybody has a mistrust in women, which means both of your premises have fallen apart in less than 10 seconds. So, keep going.
Over at Very Smart Brothers, Damon Young writes about realizing his deeply held belief that women aren't as trustworthy as men. He cites women's crazy overreactions being the butt of the joke in stand-up comedies, the plot line of books and movies, and the crux of most of the conversations he's had with other men about women.
You have got to be kidding me. Lacey, people make jokes about subject matters you might not like. People make jokes about things that you might not like. It doesn't mean that they don't trust women, or they don't like women, or that they don't believe women. A joke is something, by definition, you're not supposed to take seriously. If you see something that happens in a sitcom, it hasn't actually happened in reality unless it was said or annotated that this is based on a true story. And even then, it's probably loosely based on a true story, and even then, technically speaking, it still didn't actually freaking happen. So I say all that to say, just because people make jokes about irrational women, the funny part about those jokes is that the women they're talking about are irrational, and they're funny because they are true. That's the joke. You idiot.
Because women's feelings can't be trusted, our experiences and our very sense of reality aren't to be trusted either. Are you sure that happened? Are you sure you're being rational?
Lacey, that is called a police investigation. You do understand that that is something that happens in every reported case whenever a crime gets reported to the police. That's not something that is exclusive to rape victims or victims who claim to have been raped. That's something that happens to people who claim that any crime has transpired, whether it be theft, arson, or even a murder investigation. That's something that just happens to people who claim crimes happened to them.
Women learn to question themselves and may feel like they're going crazy. Similar questions have been asked in recent conversations about racism and police brutality as well. This is something called gaslighting. So our distrust of women is deeply ingrained, and I think that it fuels distrust of rape survivors.
Yeah, that's right. We mistrust women so much that we regularly send innocent men to jail based on the allegation that they raped a woman.
Rape victims are nearly universally doubted, and paranoia about them lying dominates every conversation.
Probably because you are about to send someone to jail or let them walk free. Listen, a trial is not something that only happens to rape victims. It's something that happens to every crime or every person who accuses someone of a crime. They're not special in that regard, Lacey. They're just being treated like the crime that it is. And it's a terrible crime, but you have to go through a trial and you have to prove that it happened. Otherwise, innocent people can lose up to 20 years of their life for something that they didn't do.
Even as studies estimate that only 2 to 5% of rape reports contain falsehoods, compare that to false theft reports, which are at about 10%.
There is no source to support anything that you just said.
The amount of people who distrust survivors is hugely disproportionate to the reality of sexual assault. Male rape survivors aren't believed either, but for a different set of reasons. There's a degrading myth that men can't be raped because they're animals that always want sex. He must have wanted it, right?
Actually, Lacey, men cannot be raped in a court of law because the definition of the word rape is the male penis to the female vagina. That's why men can't be raped in the court of law. I know, it's some bullshit, but it's not because this idea that men constantly want sex, since by definition they cannot be raped by women.
Wrong. The distrust and paranoia ultimately makes it harder for victims to get justice and maintains the power of rapists because they know they won't be held accountable.
That is a crock of bullshit, Lacey. If a man gets accused of raping a woman, his life is over. His friends and his family probably don't want to hang around him. There's no way he's going to be able to get a job because then he's going to be accused of being a rapist, or at least being accused of sexually harassing a woman. Women aren't going to want to date him because they think that he's a rapist and he's going to hurt them. No man is able to be accused of being a rapist and be able to go back to their life and have it be the way it was prior to that happening. Their life gets destroyed, and it's over whether they get convicted or they don't get convicted.
97% of rapists never face any punishment.
Lacey, it is impossible to know that. You know you don't know that. And if you do know that, I don't understand why you weren't at the trial speaking the gospel truth about all of these men who raped all of these women. You cannot say that 90% of all rapists get to walk free. First of all, rape is a crime that very rarely happens to women anyway, which a lot of women should just be fucking thankful for that and prepare should it happen. But the truth of the matter is, rape is not something that happens to most women in the course of their lifetime. That being said, Lacey, I'm going to show you something interesting. About a year ago, I had a really good friend. She's a very beautiful young lady, but she was really skinny, so I wasn't all that attracted to her. And she was supposed to be a good friend of mine, but she decided that it would be a fantastic idea to lie to other people and say that I was stalking her when I really wasn't. Now, I have that entire story in detail on my channel. However, I personally had to go through and live through what happens when a woman decides to lie on you for no fucking reason. You see, Lacey, as an individual who had to deal with the negative ramifications of someone saying I was stalking them, could you imagine what would have happened if she said I raped her? Oh, I know exactly what would have happened. I wouldn't be here today to make this video should she had claimed that I had raped her. Because even to this day, I am still suffering from the negative ramifications of her lying and saying I stalked her when I didn't. That is why people don't believe immediately when someone says they were raped.
So, too long didn't read version, women aren't crazy liars, men aren't inherently more trustworthy just because they're men, and using this bullshit against people who are victims of a violent crime is messed up. So, let's not.
Dear Lacey, you lied about people mistrusting women, because we can see it from objectively speaking, lots of people end up convicting men or accusing men of raping them and destroying their reputation. You lied about most of these men being rapists because we don't have no proof, no evidence, no sources to support the fact that 90% of the men claimed to have been rapists actually raped women. Because if you did, I highly doubt that they would have been able to walk scot-free when we can see that the mere allegation of being called a rapist can destroy your reputation. Hell, being called a fucking stalker can destroy your goddamn reputation, let alone being labeled as a rapist. So, Lacey, you lied. The most ironic part about your video is just how much you lied about how people don't trust women. Now, guys, remember the story of the boy who cried wolf. You see, the moral of the story is, and I'm sure you already know that, but this is important. The moral of the story is, the more times someone lies, or if someone has a reputation of being a liar, or if too many times someone or a group of people have lied about something, that the moment they finally tell the truth, no one believes them. The real enemy to all rape victims are the rapists and the women who lie about innocent men that have taken advantage of them. If you really want to help weed this out, Miss Green, you have to acknowledge the fact that some women do in fact lie about being raped when they haven't. Otherwise, less and less people are going to believe them. It's going to get to a point where too many women have lied about being raped that eventually you will get this rape culture where no one believes rape victims. I guarantee it. So, with that being said, I certainly hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, man, go ahead and click that like button. Go ahead and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below. Tell BASSFZz thanks once again for helping me out with this video, and most importantly, have a great day, and I will see you cool cats soon. Adios.